Hi there. Thank you for downloading, listening to, and watching the Lean Into Artcast. This is a show where a couple of visual storytellers get together and take a walk around various topics that tend to cross one's path when you go on this endeavor of communicating with images. We think hard about this stuff, so you will too. And my name is Jerzy Drost. I'm a cartoonist and teaching artist, and the other host is named.
Hey, I'm Rob Stenzinger. I do user experience design and interactive development of lots of kinds, and I teach that stuff too.
Good to see you again, Rob. I feel like I should throw out something at the top for the people watching the video saying, like, what's going on with Jerzy's headphones? They broke literally just before we started recording. and I grabbed a little roll of electric tape to try to, like, fix them really quickly, and it didn't work. So they're, like, kind of half hanging on my head. And I have a new kitten in the studio who may wind up interrupting at various points during the episode, but we will do our best with what we got.
Like all kinds of performance variables that we'll be playing today, and you're just getting started. That's just a couple of them.
And we just started, yeah. So, but this is, I mean, performance variables leads into what this week's topic is, which is, my gosh, 2020 has thrown us such a variety of curveballs this year. And one of the ways that we have been coping with the curveballs is a new reliance and focus on video, and like in terms of a tool for connecting, for teaching, for I don't know, presenting, broadcasting, being a part of things. Like we are participating in more and more things via video now, right? Which has asked us to do many of us, if not all of us, to do like a new kind of leveling up with how we approach video, how we consume it, what tools we use to connect through it, and how we use it to reach out, right?
Totally. You probably have used some video in your day-to-day, maybe even a lot, but then to need it in so many ways every single day, I think is probably, like, this year is a bit of a change. I mean, even if you've been really into this, like we do a podcast just about every week on video, and one would think, well, how could you do more video? Well, it's just because it's needed for everything, for socializing, and all kinds of stuff, depending on your situation in how you're dealing with the distancing in the pandemic and whatnot. But
yeah,
it's I mean, it's everywhere now. So because I felt comfortable and fine being a little bit less like informal. Like the Lean Into Artcast, we didn't have, I mean, honestly, you've done so much to level up our video production and how we show up in our recordings. Yet there's so much more that could be done, and we started talking about this months ago. I mean, right near the beginning of all this, considering virtual events and all that stuff. But the video is such a key component of every bit of it. And
yeah, very
we've been
much.
thinking about and experimenting.
Yeah, we have. And so we thought this week we would do a quick check-in on what we've learned so far. And given what we've learned, how does that make us, like, how does that affect our thinking going into 2021? And I would like to try to paint with a broad brush in the sense of covering a lot of different use cases, not just teaching arts, not just self-promotion as an artist, not just connecting with friends and family, but like encompassing all those things and seeing how they all, because at least from my experiences, they've all informed one another. They have all tied into one another in some not insubstantial ways. And while I feel like there's I hear a lot of discussions around me of returning to normal. I'm like, yeah, that'll be awesome. But it sure seems like this experience and this leveling up we've all done will have some kind of profound impact going forward, even when we can gather again, even when we aren't, I don't want to say quarantine, but for all intents and purposes, a lot of us are, rightly so, avoiding gatherings, right? So
Yeah, it, I don't know. It's an interesting topic because for some folks they would hear this, and I don't know, folks who listen to or watch the Lean Into Art podcast would be like, "What do you mean distancing?" But we are, and I
Yes, we
think
are.
probably a good amount of you are as well.
I imagine
And
so. Yeah.
yeah,
All right.
so I mean, but what happens when we need to do less of that? Because we'll get there eventually.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I'll get the music going. And that music indicates that we are now in the first part of the show where we talk about what it looks like. So let's share some of the learning we've done in terms of what it looks like. Do you want to do some demos, Rob, of some of the research you've been doing?
Oh, let's see. Like, what's funny is I've been doing a little bit of demoing in like a recent episode. I had a green screen going the entire time, and we might have mentioned it, but I don't have a green screen going today. I'm actually really in this place. Oh, hold on a sec. Maybe I'm going to change settings here. So what if we just did this? And I said, maybe podcasting is a little bit much for me today. I need to chill out and play some Keith Courage.
Aha.
Go there. I'm joking.
Yeah, we should also say, for those who haven't deduced this in the audio version, that this is one where we're going to be doing some visual demos. But yes, there we go. Rob is now playing a TurboGrafx 16 video game, and he's inset in the bottom right of the screen, so we can watch him while he's playing the game. Now, people who have been watching any like live like gaming streaming gamers have seen this setup before. This is not, profoundly new what you're doing here, right? Except for you were literally playing a TurboGrafx 16, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm actually playing a physical TurboGrafx 16. Allow me to point it out on my desk.
Oh, right there. Holy cow.
There it is. Yep. So
how are you doing that? How are you rigging that up so that you can run your TurboGrafx 16 into your computer and then broadcast it?
Well, I have the ability to, I have a capture card, and it's the Elgato HD 60S, I think. And it connects via USB 3. You put any kind of HDMI source in there, and it will do a pass-through, so you can have a separate monitor to watch and do things with. But then, or you could just use the software itself to be your monitor. And that's what I was doing, is looking at Keith Courage in a window while interacting. There's a smidgen of a delay though, so it would be probably better to do a separate monitor.
Okay, when you say capture card, is this an internal, external card?
It's an external card that it connects through USB 3.
Oh, wow.
And and so you could connect it to a laptop or a desktop or what have you. You don't have to have the internal space to mount a card. And but let's see. So, but that can take in like any source. A few different episodes, I was experimenting with that, and I would just put my Mac in through that type of connection. And it was my second monitor on my Mac, and I could just share when I was doing some of my ad reads for coaching or for workshops and stuff. That's what I was doing. I switched to that that video source.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, in the second half, we'll talk a little bit about like the whys of this, but like let's keep going through some of the hows. Like so this is something this is technology. This is off the shelf. You can go to like any like Best Buy, Micro Center, and get this kind of capture card. Plugs in, like you said, it plugs into a laptop, so you don't necessarily need to have like an awesome graphics card on your computer because there is a GPU in the capture card, right?
There's a difference by model. So it depends on which capture card you get.
Okay.
Some capture cards are more CPU intensive, and others try to do more of the work. And the one I have, I am forgetting. I think it's just by testing, it didn't tax the CPU that much, but it does use your CPU. So worth thinking about. If you're at the edge of what your computer can currently do comfortably, that's a factor.
Yeah.
So that capture card is then being managed through OBS, of course.
OBS, Open Broadcasting Software, or Open Broadcasting Studio, Broadcast Studio, something like that. But you do a search for OBS Studio, you'll find it. We'll link to it in the show notes. But so what else you got? What else is in your setup that you've been playing with?
What else? Well, I switched to my what I call my free cam, so I can just, like if I'm in a situation where I need to point a camera at something else, I can do that. Just jump to something that is somewhere in my setup. That I can also switch between. Let's see. Well, I can switch, but I'll demo that in a second. The thing I'm using to do the switching, or at least most of it, because I'm not fully set up yet, I'm using this separate tool called UpDeck. And that lets me remotely control OBS. And so I actually have a couple of old Android phones because I do mobile development, and I sometimes get lucky where if you keep a lookout, you can find an inexpensive phone. So actually, I'm just gonna I'll switch to the free cam again, boop, just because I can, and then I'll show that this is the little handheld switcher that I can switch to my desk cam if I wanted to. And that's mounted overhead, so I can do some sketching or working with sticky notes and other physical media. I think you have a lot of similar setup things too, Jerzy. So why don't you do a couple demos, and then I'll switch back and do another one.
Okay, sure. So let me switch to my other. So for people who are like super new to OBS, it's basically like you can network in a whole bunch of different sources, a bunch of different cameras, and you can switch between them via what Rob was showing with that UpDeck thingy with like a little switcher like that, or like even within the software itself, it shows all the different scenes that you make, and you can just switch between them. What I have, and I'm going to actually just take my webcam and show it on my desk. Now, please forgive the state of my studio. I have not fully moved in yet, and I am introducing a new kitten into the house. But you can see here on my desk, I've got a tripod with an old iPhone. I think this is an SE that is no longer in service as a phone, but I use it as a webcam, and I have it with an NDI camera program, which we'll talk a little bit about NDI in a second. So that is set up for when I want to do drawing like on my desk. And then I have my Vio Z Canvas, which I've been using as my drawing computer for some years now. I drew or did a lot of the penciling of Science Comics rockets on this machine. And then you can actually, through this technology called NDI, you get a plugin for the NDI plugin for OBS. I can take that computer, which I'm not streaming on right now, but I can route it in as a source. So I am on two computers right now, and I can, start drawing in Clip Studio Paint on my laptop and simultaneously be talking and looking at the screen. And it puts very little CPU load on the laptop, so like my drawing happens a lot more effortlessly. It's not struggling. The fan's not running at 1,000,000 miles per hour. But then through Ethernet, I got to patch in, both my computers are plugged in via Ethernet to my router. And then with the NDI plugin, they can talk to each other in this way, where I can route it in as a source or switch to my overhead cam like I just showed you a second ago, or switch back to me, or even switch back to me and Rob talking together. So we're talking on Zoom. That's being captured. My camera's being captured as a source, but then I also have sources for my laptop and my overhead cam. And it's pretty simple to switch between these things. While you're presenting, there's very little, like, even if there's like a little bit of a hiccup, it's no worse in my opinion than if you're in a Zoom meeting. You're like, okay, I'm going to turn on screen sharing, everybody. Where is it again? It's right there. There it is. And then the screen share takes a second, and it happens, So I've been using this for my online classes that I've been teaching, and switching back and forth between, like doing quick demos in Clip Studio Paint. But even then, I feel like, I'm going to get more into this in the second half, but there's something about the kids actually seeing me doing penciling, seeing the pencil touch the paper and the way my hand is moving when I'm drawing versus seeing a drawing sort of magically kind of happening on a screen share with Clip Studio Paint. Does that make sense?
It totally. Yeah.
So I found there's a lot of value in having an analog setup and a digital setup. And of course, this also works if I ever want to do some live streaming of my, comics work. If I want to, do a quick recording for my Patreon or for the people who support me for Boulder and Fleet, I can very simply capture that. So it works both as a teaching tool and as a self-promotional tool. Whoops, switch back to that. There we go. So,
and it may be a little bit of, I guess, trying to bringing in extreme measures if you just are doing this to socialize.
yeah.
But I do think it brings in new possibilities for socializing too. Like you could use some of these approaches to play games together across distances and whatnot. And especially to be able to do that where it's like, to have a view of, well, a couple of cameras. If you have an old phone and it opens up some possibilities to, to make it a little more immersive, like the kinds of things you would experience if you were in the same room together. Let's see if.
Speaking of which, I want to tell a story of something that happened at CXC this year that I got really excited about. So I didn't check to see if my Chrome capture was working properly. It is not. Let's get that fixed right now. Okay.
Such a checklist to get ready for this kind of presentation, but
yeah, it kind of is.
You got there pretty quick.
Yeah,
here we are.
It only took a second. So, one of the things that happened in our Discord stream or Discord server at CXC this year was a couple of artists put together a quick game of TKO. Have you heard of this, Rob?
I haven't.
So this is from Jackbox Games, and they're not a sponsor of this show, but I'm just giving the information in case people want to follow up on it. So it's a drawing game show where people write out loose and lousy T-shirt slogans, and then the slogans get shuffled amongst the players, and then the players have to draw a drawing to go with the T-shirt slogan in like 10 seconds or less. And, it was a very lively and fun game to watch, and then people they also had one of the hosts actually playing ukulele music for the round music and everything. And actually, I wound up buying, when you're done, the game's over, you can purchase the T-shirts that are generated by it. And actually, Ann and I got one of the shirts that was produced by this game, and let's see if I can get it in the shot.
No.
So yeah, the slogan was "Dad jokes, am I right?" And then the drawing that they put together in 10 seconds looks like one of those little rubber finger puppets monsters that they used to have in the 80s and the quarter machines outside of Giant Way.
You can totally get those out of quarter machines.
Yeah. So anyway,
radio. But yeah.
But this was done at a comics festival, sure, but this would be something that you do with friends just for fun. This is the kind of leveling up in video that happens even in a social way, not just in a teaching and presenting kind of way. So anyway.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out. It's these are all communication tools, and it's almost like saying that talking about caring a lot about what you would put into a presentation or doing public speaking or something like that. You can talk about so many elements of that's a useful type of communication. And I think we're running into a situation where we're gaining growing appreciation and awareness of needs we can meet through being flexible with video sources and possibilities. And when you can mix them together in different ways to have a couple of cameras juxtaposed, all of a sudden it's a really different situation. Like you said, it's not just a magic drawing appearing. You see, even if you're not filming an analog tool, you could be filming a digital tool across the analog barrier, right?
Yeah.
And you get to see the interactions with essentially the user interface of that tool, and it's that's more, you're layering information, and that's a way to potentially.
let's talk about that layering of information, because actually, for those who are watching the video, we're doing that right now, right? Like, so we have this crawl that's happening under our two pictures. First of all, we got it side by side. See it, so instead of it switching between me and Rob automatically like it did in the old days with Google Hangouts, we're both reacting live. You get to see Rob's reaction to me while I'm talking, and my reaction to him, and so on, which creates a richer communication. But then for people who are tuning in for the first time, like, who are these two people? Well, there's this information that's happening at the bottom of the screen, right? And there's that kind of that thinking about who's interacting with this and how and what do they need to know is part of the sort of lifting you have to do when you think about leveling up video. It's not just about like, well, there's cool toys I can use. Okay, well, let's think about how we're making this and why. Who is it for? What are they encountering when they encounter this video for the first time? And how can I make this so that it's maximized for that person, right?
And one thing that we're not really covering much is like when you need a lot of interactivity between participants in that video experience. That's when you would want to look into other tools that help with laying things out and interacting with a visual space in a live way. Like you've pointed out that whiteboard app.
Yes. Before. Yeah, I can pull it up real quick and we can talk about it, because this is something I discovered and when I was doing a lot of testing for the Super Comics Challenge game show, which is, again, it's something that we produce entirely live through OBS. But this whiteboard, it's called awwapp.com. It's a web whiteboard. And it is just, I mean, it's just like a dozen whiteboards out there, in that there's like, there's pen tools, there's marker tools, there's an eraser tool that's like a vector eraser and a more traditional eraser. You can make multiple pages. And then you can export it. So I'll go back to page 1. See, that circle's not there. And you can export it as a multi-page PDF when you're done. But the neat thing is that you can invite people to collaborate on it. So if I invite Rob right now, which I'll do via sending him the link in Zoom chat.
Hangouts would be better.
Oh, would it? Okay. Well, then that's the way I'll do it. Sorry. Hangouts. And this, I mean, it's only taking a second to do. I know there's like a little bit of a delay while I'm vamping while I do this, but so I share the link with Rob, and then he can get in here and we can draw at the same time. You're going to see Rob's pen appear on the screen as soon as he gets there. It'll either say anonymous, or if he logged in with something, it's going to say,
I just was here, quick, and just clicked on through.
There he is. So we're both drawing at the same time. So I'm drawing and Rob's drawing. And you can have a lot of people in here. Now, why AWW app or a web whiteboard? This is the one that I found that had the least amount of latency when you have a lot of people participating. This one, like I tried Google Jamboard and a few others, and like they got really slow and laggy when you got more than a couple people drawing at the same time. So what good is this? Well, this is all. Here's the other thing: is I'm thinking about is accessibility. This just happens in the browser. You can do this on an iPad. You can do this on an old laptop, a Chromebook. Whether you want to draw with your mouse or with the trackpad, or if you have a pen, and then you can easily overlay. And this is what I did for Super Comics Challenge. I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to add my camera right over top of this, and then boom, shrink it down. And then I can even have, let's see if I can add Rob real quick.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, well, I got to add a window capture. And let's add zoom. And there's Rob. And then I just crop it real quick. And then we can be, right. So like here's a very quick and dirty version of what I did for Super Comics Challenge, where it's now I've got two sources. I've got my webcam, I've got Zoom routed in, and then Rob can have this open on a separate machine as far as the whiteboard, and be drawing on that, and just have Zoom open either on a phone or on his laptop, right? So it's pretty straightforward and simple to use, but you can do some cool drawing together, or do demonstrate. Actually, I use this with my students all the time. So like one of the things we do in our classroom is when we met in place was we had a whiteboard and we would do what I called the cool down exercise, where I would draw a random shape like so, and then the students have to turn it into something, right? You can add, but you cannot subtract. You can't erase any of the lines, but you can add to the lines. The kids turn into something else, right? It's just a fun way for them to put on a performance in front of one another, and also play with some of the principles of comic storytelling. And then, what am I trying to say? But in a Zoom call, which is like what our classes are being held in, that performance aspect is now like a little less obvious. So I employed this to say, okay, we're doing cool down now. I pick 2 students, they draw, everybody watches and can comment while it's happening, right? So it still retains some of that spontaneity, some of that performance, some of that playfulness, but in a way that, is works with the technological constraints that we're facing when we can't meet together, right?
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of tools that help with because you're solving a different problem. You're solving like immediacy of visual input and reacting to visual input visually beyond just an image of you as a participant, right? So you have an artifact that you're creating together, and that creates a lot of new possibilities. And so if you're facilitating a meeting, if you're hosting a game, if you now have a space to create together in more ways than the video streams. So
yeah.
And I was experimenting. Let's see, did I succeed in signing in here? Okay.
Oops.
I was looking at Miro, and it's tried to redirect me to an app. So yeah, let's see. This would be another opportunity. I could, what the hey, I will, so we talked about NDI, right? Mm-hmm. So NDI is this standard put out by a company that cares a lot about like video production, new tech. And but they made it open, so there's a lot of tools that support it. So suddenly you can do things like stream like your PC screen to another machine, or a Mac to another, and it all gets routed into OBS, which gets to be this management and coordination and composition tool with which opens up so many possibilities. But then I recently got a different tablet recently, and it's like how things share and participate and communicate together vary, right? And I started to look like, well, if for some things I'm able to connect my iPad via NDI, and that works okay. It could be the age of the iPad, hence I mentioned new tablet. But here I am on an Android tablet, and I didn't have as easy of an option for NDI, but who knows? I'm still looking and researching. The thing I found in like the near term is that Windows has this, it's like Miracast, which is yet another standard, I believe, to get stuff from one device to display on another device, right? So as I'm describing this, I'm starting to try to launch something called Screen Stream Mirror Pro. And if I start casting, and then it wants me to rate it 5 stars. Oh, apps.
That is one of my favorite little headaches of the modern age, is that like 9 times out of 10 when I'm launching an app, it's like I need something immediately, right? I need something now. And then when the app stops, it's like, wait, before I give you that thing that you asked for, will you please tell your friends about me? No, I want the thing,
aren't I? I've been a good app. Tell me I'm a good app. Tell your friends I'm a good app. And now that's money. I mean, I like your appreciation. Thanks for smiling. This is good. Smile at your friends about me. Do it, please.
No, they should say that when I'm getting ready to close the app. I see you're closing. If you got what you needed, please tell your friends. There, that's at least something. But like the whole like stopping me at the door, like before I walk into the McDonald's, being like, hey, Tell your friends about McDonald's. I haven't even gotten the food yet.
And you know what? In the case of some businesses, it's so out of context because it's like pretty sure they've heard of you, right? I think you're good. Pretty sure.
Instagram, guess what? They talk about you on TV shows. You have no problem. You don't need the rating.
So funny. I'm still working on this sharing, and then I will switch over to this video source. Fun. And let's see here. Here's where we're doing the dance of, oh, that's fun too. It's the app grabs my mouse. So you gotta be aware of that too. So I'm using the Connect app on the there we go. So I'm using the Connect app on PC to send an Android tablet through Miracast and use it. It's able to reach out through Miracast because of an app called Screen Stream Mirror Pro. So there we go. So I can switch back. And I was way back when, a few minutes ago, talking about this app called Miro. And this is a way to do sort of sticky note like collaboration things, diagramming collectively and together. But if you think about it, in a way, a game board is a diagram. Like you could import a photo of a board that you like, to use, or your favorite game. I don't know, copyright, what have you, but private, personal use, I don't know. But you can use like these pieces and graphics as like game. I don't want a tutorial right now, Miro. Thanks. Okay, don't want that tutorial either. Okay, please stop.
Oh man.
All right. Want a shape? There we go. Hello, shape. And I've got two shapes. So anyway, so imagine these are game pieces that you're moving around on this thing that could have potentially, it's a hypothetical game board in the back. Okay,
I
stop
see.
giving
Yeah,
me to
we could be playing Candyland right now. Yeah.
Total. There you go. All right, so then.
And this is like the whiteboard that I showed, where it's like we could be collaborating simultaneously on this board.
Right, and for some audiences, drawing freehand tools that emphasize that are great and like a more familiar, comfortable mechanism. But there are other mechanisms that let you get more than one person to collaborate. And so I think I can invite Jerzy to this, but I'm not going to jump through that hoop right now.
Yeah, no, we get the idea.
Yeah,
that's really cool. So there's more than one way to do this. You don't have to like go get the NDI plugin and then install it in OBS in order to be able to do that kind of casting.
Yeah, good point. It's let's see. It is NDI is pretty great though. As far as how elegant it works, that's I prefer it. As long as the devices have overall the ability to share with a good enough frame rate. Also, worth noting is that if you want synchronous audio to match some kind of visuals. So it's, for instance, if you're on camera through an NDI device and what have you, that ups the ante, the amount of difficulty or performance needs for that device to perform well as a source. If you want both the audio and the video to be synchronized, not that much pressure for like a desk cam, like, and you don't need to. I mean, it depends on what you're performing, right? If you're pointing that at an instrument, then that might be an issue.
Yeah,
I've had better luck with USB cameras. Also worth noting, USB cameras are getting a little cheaper. So I bought a $20 second camera. That's what I use for my my whiteboard cam,
which you used very recently on the show. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, and I have a second microphone I can pop out of the stand here and just sort of talk at the whiteboard.
How's traffic this morning, Rob?
Traffic. My arms are tired.
Oh yeah, hey, on the US 23, it's bumper to bumper. It's like a GD parking lot out there.
Yeah, tell you what, we have some snow around here. So, um, anyway, so diagramming and whatnot, exploring like what would be a sort of like a good enough, um, camera angle and lighting and arrangement. I mean, there's all kinds of things to work through. I've been, you know, sometimes I hop onto the Lean Into Art Discord just to do some practicing and demoing. So worth mentioning. We'll mention that later on too. You can, because of course it's streaming in the section for patrons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, I can switch between different sources and do diagramming. And, so part of that is like, well, what works for me? What have I practiced? Like, what do I want to capture? And capturing a physical whiteboard actually just stuck out to me because it's so familiar throughout my career. I have an affection for drawing on a whiteboard. So here I am. Yeah.
Well, and again, it goes back to that whole analog thing I was talking about a moment ago, where there's something about seeing the hand actually doing the thing. Whoa, hey, we got second view all of a sudden, and there he's back.
I'm everywhere.
Up. Yeah. So this is not like high tech wizardry that you're performing here. This is like all off the shelf stuff, and just like a little bit of like thoughtful application of like what are the needs and what why do it this way? I feel like we're closing in on break time, and we can thank some people who make the show possible, and then we can talk about like why go through all this trouble, why think about all these different use cases.
Certainly, I don't have to do one more demo, but I could.
Yeah. What do you got? What's your last demo?
Not
your last demo. The last one you're going to share today.
Yeah. So swap to me as the screen, and this is something interesting where. The idea of chroma key, I mentioned I performed with a green screen as like my background. I had my own office as the pretend background for my real office. So that I was like, hey, chroma key is pretty cool. What else could we do with that? I would like to be able to have the sort of layers of information and the flexibility to jump between. I know often we can critique the use of like presentations and whatnot as maybe not the greatest example of keeping people's attention and conveying the information you want to do, but you can be thoughtful about it, right? So you could use presentations as like lower thirds and use different even like different views. Like I was playing around with like full size slides that have maybe some lower third information, but no background, and also with a background. And I think I'm going to use this for my next workshops. So
how are you doing that? I mean, are you actually making like text sources in OBS? Oh, you're switching all over the place. What how are you doing?
Oh,
that?
Yeah. So this is how am I doing that? It's when I think about the end product of some of the videos and workshops I've made, I add this kind of thing in post. It's like I do the performance, but then I'm adding these extra graphics and layers and information. And just dabbling with this, it's like, well, hey, wait a minute. Between OBS and potentially just the slide deck that happens to have a chroma keyed green background, right? I could do a lot of interesting things. So here I have like a block of color in OBS that I'm laying over this NDI source, which is the window of, in this case, it's not a presentation tool. You'll run into tensions with presentations tools because they will, some only want to display in full screen. And in order to do what I want to do, I need something that can present well in a window. And then it becomes like well behaved for me and what I need to do, because I need to see other stuff on this machine. But here I have like a Google Slides presentation that's just 3 slides because it was just proving the concept of can I do this? And then I have different scenes that I can present the presentation and me in a variety of ways. I can present the presentation below me, or I can present it right, by my side, and I can present it where it's fully integrated. We overlap. So, and there you go. And that provides me a variety of cases. So if you think about like simple graphics and someone doing a segment on a show, a science show or what have you, here are a variety of possibilities for simple graphics. And just to show that a little more complex one, my back in a moment is a total quick and rough draft experiment that is showing a motion graphic done in a web page overlaying what happens to be, well, it's the TurboGrafx in the background. But this could be still images, this could be pre-recorded videos, all kinds of things. So anyway, there you go. That was my last couple of demos, thinking of like pieces I've been trying to put together for the upcoming presentation work.
I totally need to steal that overlaid text idea from you for when I'm doing some of my classes, because I make references to certain bullet pointed lists, and I don't like just putting a bullet pointed list on the screen. We could talk more about that in the second half. But like having it overlaid with me, like if I say like, okay, what are the 4 tools cartooning? Shape, size, line, and color. If those are appearing there, right? Like there's like that's like more visual inculcation to help send home the idea of these 4 tools over and over again. Anyway, that's cool. That's really cool. It's been fun watching you experiment with this, Rob. And like, this is all stuff that Rob's been sharing with me before and after shows for the last couple of weeks. And I'm glad that we finally got to like do some of those demos live on the air. So, are you ready to take a minute and a half break, and then we can talk about?
Learned it by watching you, as the saying goes. So, yeah. But let's take a break, and
all right.
So we're gonna talk about the future, aren't we?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, how are we thinking about this going forward? So in a minute and a half, we're going to talk about that. But first, got to thank the people who make this show possible, and those are the folks who support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/LiaToArt is the website. And what is it? It's a way for you to give us a monthly upvote. If you believe in Rob and Jerzy and what we do, what we make, you can support us for as little as $1 a month. And I want to thank 5 people who have been doing exactly that. They've been supporting us on an ongoing basis. Gail Bushman. Thank you, Gail, for believing in us and what we do. You can find Gail's work on Instagram at Nightingale Art. And Sarah Loutfi. Thank you, Sarah, for supporting the show. It means a lot to us. And Sophie Lawson. Thank you, Sophie. You can find Sophie on Twitter at Sophie Lawson Art. And Robert Clemens Jr. Thank you, Robert. You can find Robert on Twitter at Rob Clemens Jr. And Cameron Callahan. Thank you, Cameron. You can find Cameron on Twitter at Cam Callahan. You can join them all at patreon.com/LiaToArt. We will find all the shows we make, as well as the extra leans, the shows we record only for people who support us on Patreon. Those posts become an open mic thread. We can talk about whatever you want in a safe space with fellow leaners. And it also gets you access to the LiaToArt Discord Patreon-only channels. We have 3 channels that are only visible to people who support us on Patreon. Once again, the address is patreon.com/LiaToArt. Or didn't we make another URL, Rob? Didn't we make LiaToArt.com/Patreon resolve there?
They both work.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there we go. Patreon.com/LiaToArt. Thank you to everybody who supports us there. It means a lot to us.
It really does. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I need some music to get us to the next part. How about, I got one. It's not quite the Price is Right Matterhorn, or what was that one called? I forget what that game
It's
is.
It's the mountain climber. I don't remember the name of that. It's Alpiner. Alpiner?
I think so. I
think
think so.
of a TI 99 4A cartridge. I'm not sure.
Well, that whatever it was, that noise indicates that we are now in the second half of the show, where we usually talk about more abstract concepts like, well, how are we thinking about this? How does all this leveling up change what we're thinking about going forward? Like I said at the top, when normal returns, debatable, but surely when we can gather, what we learned in this year should help augment what we do going forward, right? if everybody is suddenly better at video, whether it's like ways to watch video, getting access to video, or creating video, surely it will have some kind of, and don't get me wrong, I'm going to be as excited as anybody else that I don't have to attend a fleet of Zoom meetings like 5-6 times a week, right? Like that's going to be marvelous. I'm going to be so glad. But on the other hand, it's like, well, but knowing how to do this well means that we can probably bring that thinking to our IRL events. Yes? No? What are you thinking, Rob?
I mean, historically, I mean, I thought you pointed this out. I mean, this is a lot like when, well, the web became more popular. There was a time when businesses were like, should I go online?
Yeah, that's right.
There's a time before, like there's a time before, always a time before. And then like now we learned some things that I think will be applying. At least those who are in the position and have the higher motivation will be right away. And I don't think you'll see sort of a revert and go back. I think you'll see more events that are more like on purpose hybrid and meant to be in person, because it's great to go to places and hang out with other people, and that is a different experience. But there's no reason why the virtual was so excluded, other than just sort of habit, right? I mean, there was a time when businesses didn't know if they should have a website, and I mean that was right at the beginning of my career, and now that's not a thing. Like everyone needs a web presence. That is so. I think we'll get to the point where that's not a thing. Like, should we do video that lets people who can't be here or have some need that being here, is in conflict with or what have you, but they want to take part?
Yeah, that was one of the first. Yeah, when I was having conversations with A2CAF people and CXC people about like, okay, well, when we do a virtual or online show, are there any advantages? And like one of the first things everybody called out was like, man, we just solved a major accessibility issue in that people who physically couldn't come to this thing can now participate in it in some way, right? That's huge. On the other hand, there's new accessibility issues in that making sure everybody has adequate bandwidth, internet, and devices that can stream the stuff, right? So like that's a whole nother thing. Is like, because another like sort of cottage industry that popped up this year was festival management software, right? It's like, hey, let us put on your show for you, and we'll even make this virtual artist alley or virtual vendors area that people can move through. And I'm like, that's cool. I have to wonder, is it backwards compatible? Can I participate in this on like a really old Chromebook, right? So like there's accessibility advantages and disadvantages the same way there is in real life, right? There's trade-offs on this stuff.
And like every bit of it, it's like, what do you include as a constraint? What matters to the goals of your event and all that? And like once the newness enters your awareness, then you need to address that. And how do you shape and design what you do next? And I mean, honestly, it took, like, think about the progression of retail and internet. It took a lot of years for retail to be like, I mean, where you think about, okay, let's say 2012-ish, and you're someone who has probably a mobile device and you're walking into a store who maybe doesn't include in their strategy that people walk into their store with a mobile device and could just order the thing somewhere else, depending on how like much of a premium they were asking, right? So, and for some retail situations, that premium was extreme enough where people said, I'm not buying it here, boop, 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 I'm out. And that was called showrooming. And it was like a shameful word in conversations and in design sessions and stuff, because it's like being in a room with failure, that kind of thing, where it's like, how dare someone operate in a way that is beyond my mental model for this arrangement? It's like, oh, okay.
Oh, they also call that Metallica-ing.
Exactly. So, I mean, some of it is like the functions in the business. There's a need to catch up, and there, like, I'm not trying to say that, like, for instance, getting all the things an artist makes for free is guaranteed ethical no matter how you do it.
No.
But,
but there is a difference between saying like, okay, well, how do we roll with this and how do we find the opportunities in there versus saying like, okay, all y'all doing this, all you kids, you're doing it wrong, right? Yeah.
Exactly. It's the things, humans build tools and we organize in organizations and all that kind of stuff, and we need to continue to adapt. And I think we've encountered an event that has created such a clear demonstration of the value of virtual participation in things. Does it mean it's either or, what have you? Okay, set the zero sum argument down. Okay, it's not either or. It's the combination, and that's what I mean. Like, so fast forward a decade ish, and retail has adapted, and it's like it takes a long time sometimes for structures and organizations and incentive models, and why do people decide the things they do to be influenced enough to take shape, to see a difference happening. But like, clearly enough time has passed where it's a lot has evolved, like going somewhere in person versus interacting with an organization online has become a lot more even, and a lot of issues have been dealt with. Like, accessibility and
accessibility. And then Steve Hamaker is in the chat and is pointing out, the on-demand rewatchability is huge too. And you think about that, that's a whole nother kind of accessibility. Oh, I didn't know about the show. I didn't make it out to the show. I wish I could have been there. Well, and now in a way you can. And so like one might say like, okay, well, cool. We'll just set up a camera on a tripod at every event, at physical events nowadays. I'm like, let's think about it harder than that, because that gives you a sense of presence and a sense of participation. But man, I have been to enough of streamed events where they set up a tripod at a person who's like, 100 feet away, and you get the echo of the room in the audio, and you can't really quite make out like their gestures and expressions. It's kind of like being in the nosebleeds in a really poorly lit and bad acoustically tuned room when you do it like on a webcam set up pointing at Ustream, right? So okay, well, let's think about this. Like, how is this experience unique? What Rob and I are doing right now, how can you recreate that at an IRL event to get the maximum for both parties, right? Both people who are tuning in far away and the people who are actually there. That's a whole new problem to solve.
It is, but it's not. It's so what? Television has been widely adopted for decades,
right?
And we've all been just immersed in it. And so even the web, like, I talk like an old, because I was there at the beginning. That was like some of the big opportunity in starting my career is because of the newness of the web, and I happened to have learned enough stuff to be helpful.
Yeah.
And the like, we've talked about this too. What is it? It's like let's see, the evolution of like from a like a really expensive skill to an expensive tool to a cheaper tool to like it. Now it's so things get integrated into like we have astounding flexible tools and capabilities on all kinds of devices all over the place. It's just a matter of putting them to use.
Yep.
So we may not be aware that we can put together engaging video content that solves problems for a variety of audiences, but like we can actually.
Yes. Yeah. This is just going to like one of the things when I get a chip on my shoulder, like when I get really riled up about sound design, I'm like, oh, I just took Impact and I wrote Blam and I turned it kind of crooked and I did it. I made a sound effect. I'm like, well, technically you did. But did you? Look again, and it's like, I feel like sometimes when people are solving these problems, they're just like, well, just set up a webcam. There you go. And it's plugged into Ustream. And I did it. I created the same experience for somebody someplace else. Well, did you? It's like, yeah. So
so it's not an all or nothing. Because what's super funny about the Impact example is I literally am that guy. So
So was I.
I've
So
done it.
to be fair, so was I. I mean, I'm more skilled now than I was then, right? And so as
Yeah. But to set up, like, maybe based on the assumption that like one and done, like you start to embark in this and continuing to be invested and aware and evolve based on what you learn. So yeah, maybe week one is a webcam on a tripod without great audio, and that's the audio source. But then you realize, like, oh, okay, this is a bubble of assumption that needs to be
yes,
popped, right? So now that I'm inside the bubble, I get to all kinds of new observations. I maybe get feedback from folks who participated saying, like, I only heard that side of the room, not that side, and the video looked okay for this but really bad for that. And all of a sudden, oh, how do I do that?
and the way this is something we were talking
that.
about very recently, is this idea of like the principles lead you to the solutions, right? So what's the principle, who are you trying to help, and what are you trying to solve? So like, for instance, Steve's in the chat again saying like the production value needs to be good for online cons to work in the future, and I agree with this. And I also think about this with my classes. I feel like, okay, let's think about the constituencies we're serving. I am asking 11-year-olds who are sitting in endless Zoom meetings with their schools to sit down for another hour and a half with me. That's a huge ask to like for them to retain any kind of attention or interest for that long at a laptop. Now, the interesting thing is, like, if you say that well, you go to a movie, well, yes, you go to a movie, but you're going to another place. There's like travel involved. There's like some kind of like cost to going to experience this that makes it feel like that there's a transaction of time. Yes, I'm driving 20 minutes to get to the movie theater to get the popcorn, to get the experience, to sit in the chair and have the lights turned down, have the communal experience. There are different exchanges happening there. But with a laptop that you're sitting with, or an iPad, you're sitting with see what?
Like a movie, the density of thoughtfulness per second is way different than like going to a class facilitated by an individual, right?
Yep. That's a good point.
I mean, look at the credits in a movie. Try to sit through the credits in most movies that don't have a surprise thing at the end, right? Very thankful for all those folks who work super hard on this thing, but like, wow, that's a lot of names. Way more than the names that if you rolled credits for your class, it'd be like Jerzy.
A couple of people who like did the class registration and organizing of the the students and everything, but yeah, right. So okay, so I'm thinking about how do I keep not just production value, because I don't think there's going to be a couple 11-year-olds in my class who are like, he has some great production values, right? Yes, I was that kid, but most of the kids are like, did I have fun or not, right? So I'm thinking about what's my presentation style, but I'm also thinking about how do I maintain visual interest, and I thought about, okay, well, what do I do in the room, right? How am I maintaining their attention and interest when I'm in the room with them? Well, I'm moving around a lot. I'm changing my volume levels a lot. I am changing the activities a lot. I'm always very attentive to the energy in the room. Harder to do in video, right? So this may sound funny. I'm saying this on the LIA Cast, which is like an hour and a half weekly show where two middle-aged men talk about art, and it's usually a 2-up for a long time. But like when I'm thinking about my classes, I'm thinking about how do I chunk it out? How do I chunk out the content? How do I make it so that it's visually worth looking at? And this is a conversation we had at CXC too, with like the programs we did, was like, we should be switching a lot, because this is a festival for a visual medium. How can we avoid just having a grid of Zoom videos on the screen? How can, even if it's something as simple as switching to a full up, switching to a 2-up, switching to a 6-up, back and forth, switching to a slide deck, and switching as much as possible, so that it's at least visually not boring, right? The content's going to be good, so we got to have the production values and the visual interest amplified to match the content.
There's a lot you're doing there. Right? So if you think about just your decision process, you're choosing to notice that this experience can be designed, and then you're including other points of view as criteria to help inform what you would want to do and shape that new version of the experience that you want to create. Acknowledging any of that it has immense utility, because you can go from just sort of saying like, well, I did things in this way and it accomplished the goals. It's like, well, I taught a thing, I I was paid fair, and I think everyone had a good experience. In this other context, I guess I'll just sort of do that on video. But instead, it's important to check those boxes to say, what of the old context can I transition in, and is there a translation, and how does that work? But then there's new possibilities too,
Yeah.
and acknowledging like, oh, well, this will be different, and different is okay.
Right.
Holy moly, we're finally getting there in like pixel perfect design. Sorry, I've got a baggage here, but like the idea that you go from one thing and it's perfectly the same as another thing is unreasonable and probably counterproductive.
Also,
and,
I mean, just from a designer standpoint, it's also boring. It's like, isn't it way more interesting if you have like unique problems to solve with every new thing that you do? Yeah.
I mean, typically, because willing to explore that, it may not look great at first, right? So maybe there's ways to practice and experiment small. And that's always a trick, especially when you're working with a large organization and you're trying to apply this kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
Where it's always succeed big, never fail is the want. And it's like, well, what human endeavor really pulls that off? Nothing. I'm pretty much pretty confident in that. You know what?
There are 2 pages in Science Comics Rockets that are dedicated just to celebrating the United States for letting the world know about its failures in the space program. Like, footage exists and you can access it. You own it if you're a United States citizen. Your tax dollars paid for it. So you own this footage. If you go to images.nasa.gov, you can download these videos. They're yours. And it is endless videos of rockets launching and exploding. Not with people on them, right? But it's like they let the failures be known because, well, one, because it was tax dollars paying for it, so we had a right to know. But also, it's this idea of, it's like, hey, this is part of learning something. We have to do this. We got to blow up some rockets so we can figure out how to make them not blow up, right?
And you're legitimately coming up against really hard constraints. And so some of those constraints where maybe like, oh, I'm not comfortable to make this transition from in person to video and what have you. Well, it's good to find those constraints and start to navigate them and see what happens. It's like, oh, I don't know if I can capture good audio. What is good enough audio and stuff? Who do I even listen to for advice on this? And it's like, you're pulling on a thread that in a path of investigation to help develop capabilities.
Yeah.
And it's not a simple transactional thing, and it takes that kind of adaptive exploration.
My wife Ann has described 2020 as the year where whenever I wasn't working, I was watching YouTube videos on my phone of men with purple lights behind them talking about video game streaming. And that was what I spent an inordinate amount of my downtime doing, is watching video after video of these people describing different ways to do this stuff, right? And like that is like a motif she noticed, is like, it's always a guy who's like really well lit and there's purple lights behind him.
Well, it's it's a funny year. I guess we're providing like our version of that is less video gamey and less purple, but it's like we've been exploring and questing and trying to discover some useful things about video and motivations behind it. So
yeah,
like, what do you any other thoughts about like the future aspect of this?
well, yeah,
I mean, we're implying that we're going to put this to use more, and like we've reached a point where we're comfortable for really trying more things with the videos.
And I'm thinking about, so actually scrolling back a couple of years, actually I think it was like A2CAF 2015, so this has been when it was still called Kids Read Comics. We did experiment with this in that the library that we partnered with, the Ann Arbor District Library, had a T1 line. So I'm like, bandwidth is not a concern here. And I said to them, well, what if we did some virtual events where we're beaming people in who we normally couldn't get, right? So I have a couple friends, Audra Furuichi and Scott Yoshinaga, who do the Nemu Nemu comic in Hawaii. Very expensive to get them here, but let's beam them in via Skype or something and do a virtual workshop / presentation thing. And I remember there was like a lot, like in some corners of the discussions I was having about it, there was a lot of head scratching. Like, is that going to be any good? I'm like, well, that we'll find out. We can do surveys afterwards and see what people thought, you know. But no, it was a, for what it was a successful event. Was it as awesome as having them there? No, but it was better than not having them there at all. And I think that kind of thinking, where it's like, now we can get people from around the world to participate in all sorts of different things all the time, right? So whether it's an event, whether it's a party, right? Like I happen to be scheduled to attend a friend's birthday party tomorrow, and you know, it's like as I look through the email list, I'm like, there are people from all over the place who are going to be at this thing, right? I think that kind of thing, at social gatherings is going to be an interesting thing, and maybe it'll be funny at first, like in some of those Disney XD shows where like the kid's on like a Segway with an iPad planted on the top or something. Maybe it'll be silly like that, or maybe it'll be richer somehow. But the way that we get to the richness is by asking ourselves, what problems are we trying to solve? Who are we trying to serve? And what are their needs? And how are they engaging with this thing when they first make contact with it? So, and then going back to that example I talked about with like a camera on a tripod at the back of a lecture hall, it's like, well, that's something. But what if we had webcams set up like at the podium and like down, like close to the presenters up on the stage, so that, you know, like you actually have multicam, you can switch if they're mic'd really well, and the mics are actually, instead of being pumped into just the external speakers in the auditorium, also being routed in through a laptop so that you can actually capture really great audio. So you would have like the TV show version and the live version happening at the same time. As you said, TV's existed for a long time. Dick Cavett show was a thing. You know, there was an audience, and then there was also good camera work, right? We're in a place where that technology has been largely democratized.
And that's the thing. So the democratization of the capabilities, and then putting them to use in a way that includes enough of the constraints and where you're at and the audience, and that navigating that leads to like useful and interesting things. It's, you know, some of us will be producing things that are pretty much like Wayne's World, but it's interactive Wayne's World and interesting and useful if you're part of that audience and conversation. And for others, where it's like, yeah, that looks kind of fake, you know, that's, you know, not all everyone's like ability to perform in context is going to, you know, meet all the different audiences' needs. And for that, you'll have bigger productions and teams legitimately, like, their skills haven't been like fully replaced, and I don't think they ever will be. You're going to need teams of humans collaborating on hard problems, bringing their kind of adaptive expertise, but it's expensive to do that, right? So if you're going to have purple lights in a stream and whatnot, in a video game or an art podcast or what have you, it's, you know, those are different barriers, different constraints that you're more easily able to reach than like some giant corporate event or like a production with a lot more funding.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Cool. I think we walked around it. And I'm glad that we close on this idea of adaptability. Like, that's really what we're pointing towards in the broadest sense possible, is that change calls for adaptation. And I would argue that adaptation, as painful as it can be sometimes, is also really exciting, right? Again, harkening back to that whole Peter and Edmund in the Chronicles of Narnia, it's like Peter heard the word adventure, Edmund heard the word danger, and both are true. They were both right. Okay, so do you want to take one more break and then come back to talk about our 2-minute practice for this session, or this 2-week period?
That sounds excellent. Let's do that.
Okay. So we're going to come back in about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, and we're going to conclude with our 2-minute practice for the last 2 weeks. Before we do that, we got to thank some more people who make this show possible. Those people happen to be us. we make stuff and we bring the thinking that we do when making the stuff into this project called Lean Into Art. And the thing that I make that I hope you will check out is the 4 Million Years Later podcast. What? Another podcast? Who's got the time? Well, it's a very different kind of podcast in that it's about pop culture. It's about a Transformers cartoon series, the Generation 1 Transformers series. And it's a story analysis show with me and my buddy Hoover, where we like watch an episode a week and then we carefully dissect and pick apart what we think made it work, where the weak points were, how we engaged with it as children, how we feel about it as adults. And the latest episode is episode 41, called The Golden Lagoon, which is one of the first episodes that ends with a pretty heavy idea, in that, like, when we think of 80s cartoons, we often think of like somebody makes a kind of a lousy joke and then all the characters look up at the sky and laugh at the end, and then the camera pulls back. You know, every Scooby-Doo episode, most Saturday morning cartoons, many Transformers episodes, and certainly a lot of G.I. Joe episodes do this. But The Golden Lagoon ends with a lone Autobot sitting on a rock looking at a devastated forest and saying, well, I guess we won, right? It's a little. I guess it could be considered heavy-handed, but I think in the time when it was released, it was kind of a bold move. And then Hoover and I spend about an hour and a half talking about all the ways it could have been even better. But we both really enjoyed this episode, The Golden Lagoon, episode 41, and that's at 4millionyearslater.com and in podcatchers everywhere. Rob, are you ready to talk about your store?
I am. I will briefly mention a few things that I have on my store page, which you can find at robstenzinger.com/store.html, and offer a few different products and services, games, coaching, and whatnot, but workshops like we've been talking about, like doing video production. And in this case, these are streamable at your convenience. So you can stream them through the Gumroad store if you want to just buy your own license to it, and there you go. You could download it and put it on any device you want, what have you, or you can experience these through that service which is called Skillshare. It's a lot like one of those like all you can learn kind of things where you have a monthly Skillshare access to tons and tons of videos. And then 3 of my workshops are up there right now, and you can, well, actually 4 are, but 2 I want to highlight. One of them, we talked about a lot of perspective taking in this episode, and including others, and how you design and navigate a project. Well, drawing user journey maps is a really useful set of techniques and process to help you do just that, and to actually get it written up in sort of this timeline flow from all these different points of view is incredibly powerful when you're helping a group of people explore things, and you're including all their ideas and how they let you purposefully do something great for the audience you're serving. So that's drawing user journey maps to design user experience, gather ideas, and collaborate. Check that one out at Gumroad and Skillshare. Also, customizing your next creative challenge. It's a really useful procedure that I use when I'm trying to figure out, well, okay, yeah, I like creative challenges, but how do I make this one work for me? Am I making a product? Am I just practicing at maximum challenge to see what happens? What am I doing with this creative challenge? Well, this is a way to thoughtfully navigate that kind of thing for you. There's a little workbook and a brief set of videos to help you, think about how you want to go about that. Are you making a product? Are you making a gift? Or what's it like? What challenge level works for you so you can tune that next creative challenge you take on? And that's all at robstenzinger.com/store.html.
That's great. And then the last thing we hope you'll check out is the Lean Into Art Discord. We have a forum for you to interact with us in between shows so that all the interaction isn't just tied to the individual episode videos. The link for the invite link for the Discord is in the show notes for this episode and every episode at leanintoart.com and patreon.com/leanintoart. Join us there. It's been fun to get to know some of the other leaners in a more like time shifted and social capacity. So, all right. Are we ready for 2-minute practice, Rob?
2-minute practice. Hey, Jerzy.
Hey, Rob.
Whew. So you ever start a 2-minute practice and think that, like, as in, like, I'm committed to doing this thing a couple minutes at a time and seeing where it goes, and think, hey, wait a minute, there's a lot more to this.
Yes. Is this what you ran into with this week's or this 2 weeks practice?
I did. So I had like some 2-minute practice adjacent things, like as far as figuring out tools and whatnot too. But I guess before we get into that, it's like, well, what was this practice that we explored the last couple weeks?
Yeah, so the idea is to try to do something with like inexpensive in terms of time, but inexpensive in terms of intellectual and emotional energy, right? So we came up with this idea of like just go around with your phone. When you see a cool looking image, take a snapshot of it. And actually, Sarah Loutfi was the one who suggested this. Is like, well, we're entering autumn in a lot of parts. We're in the northern hemisphere. Color change is part of the experience. This would be a good opportunity to snap some pictures and grab a color palette from the pictures you took. So how I found this to be pretty easy to do. What did you run into?
Well, there's a few things that, honestly, it's probably because I feel like I found like my favorite ultimate color palette tool that has gone away.
Oh,
And I know we must have talked about it on the Lean Into Art cast years ago. And it's what was it called? I've been hunting for this thing where it's in updating my Mac, right? The last OS update, a bunch of different apps went away, and it was like color. It was spelled color, right? It was like the UK English spelling of color, and it was it was awesome because it let me take a photo, get a color palette from it instantly, but then explore the relationships of those colors among colors that were in the palette and colors that I hadn't picked yet.
oh, that's
And
cool.
so it was like a color strategy, magical fun land of solve a problem and then export color palettes and you're off to the races. Import that palette into your favorite drawing app and you can paint and color away. So I didn't realize I had sort of a missing piece of my process that I had a lot of affection for, and I was like, where is that good old app? And so then I was hunting for palette apps.
Okay,
Anyway,
that's how it got more involved for you.
But that's how it got more involved, where it was like, oh, I know I could just keep this simple and use the dropper tool and pick some colors and stuff, but like I just missed that darn tool so much.
Adobe used to have like a mobile app. This is ages ago, like probably like 8 years ago, that did something similar. And I remember talking about it on Lean Into Art, actually, where you just like take a picture of a thing and it's like, okay, boom, here's your color palette extracted from that. It was really neat, but I don't even remember the name.
It was called Cooler, and I think it's still around. It's Cooler it was spelled with a K, like K-U with an umlaut, I think, L-E-R. And I think it's now it's just called Adobe Color or something like that. But I was purposefully trying not to use the Adobe tool set.
Same. And so one that I was using for this was Microsoft Power Toys.
Oh,
have you not heard of this? So
I have ago.
So yes,
it's been a long time since I've been a Windows native person, right?
So they brought it back. Yeah, it was something from the old Windows days, but they made a new version, Microsoft Power Toys Preview, I think is what it's called in the Microsoft Store, and it has a universal color picker in the browser. Like it's like a key command, and then it's like whatever, doesn't matter what app you're in, your eyedropper tool is open. You hover over things, and it'll give you the hex code for it. So I was using that for mine. And then I just like hovered over the photo, like copied the hex codes into, a notepad document, and then opened up Clip Studio Paint, typed in the hex codes into the color wheel, and then just blasted some color next to the image. So, not totally automated, but it was fast, and for 2 minutes I felt like I had a lot of time just to grab 4 or 5 colors. So I felt like the technological hurdles I was jumping through weren't like, they didn't add any like extra friction for me. So here's one of the ones I did, which was a photo I took in my front yard celebrating my Halloween setup. And plus it's like it was a moment where I was like, oh, these are awesome spooky colors. Let's put together a spooky palette real quick.
Is this so the skeleton and the lit up tree, like depending on when I glance at it, I'm like, oh, the skeleton's dancing, or I'm like, wait a minute, that skeleton's chasing me.
Yeah, yeah. Mr. Bones wants a hug. Yeah, that was the idea of it, right?
Nice.
So, but also, you know, I got these cool spooky Halloween lights with like the eerie green and the cool purple, and so anyway, I was like, I don't know, that was just proving the case of like how easy.
How do you feel about it? Like, so that
Yeah.
that is the practice. How do you feel about the color palette you got out of it?
Oh, I'm totally going to use this for some, you know, spooky chapters of a book in the future for sure. Right. Like, so like, yeah, it's like I was getting okay, here's the difference that I noticed in my approach. Cause I also, and I don't have the color palette. I think I accidentally deleted this one, but I have a, a Google Photos folder of Transformer screen grabs that I use for like texting with friends, but also for use of the 4 Million Years Later podcast. And, one of the things that I love in these old cartoons is the color palettes sometimes are like really, really striking when you stop and look at them, you know? So I was also grabbing some photos from episodes I was talking about with Hoover and grabbing the color palette off of that. Like if you look at like that red with that like teal and like the cool mysterious purples behind her. So in those cases, it just became more of me exploring what I consider to be thoughtful and well-crafted design. Those are the cartoon ones. The ones where I was grabbing photos, they tended to fall into moods. I was capturing mood palettes, which was cool.
That's a really interesting distinction because yeah, if you're pulling if you're taking a snapshot of a magazine cover or like an object or something that like probably someone was solving problems of color relationships, that's baked in. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas the environment around us, it's like, how interesting. I like that distinction a lot because it's still useful, like photos, moods. I can share too, like my screen of what I ended up using. I like this app. I don't mean to, you know, slight it, but let's see. What would be a good point of view? Oh yeah, I guess I will go with this one. Okay. So this is an app called Palettes Pro. And it lets you solve problems of variety. Oh, it's funny. I have chroma key turned on in the scene.
Oh, you do? I can see your sweater at the bottom row of the colors.
Okay, so let me fix this. So I'm going to go to this scene, and I'm going to. This is funny. So this I'm going to send to back. Excuse this. Move to bottom. Whoops. There we go. And now you can see my iPad and I can scooch myself out of the way if I do this right. Whoop. Okay. So good enough. Yeah. Anyway, there's this app is called Palettes Pro and it really is good at I mean, you can import a color really easily. You know, picture colors and you could do you know, from your photo library and all that kind of stuff. But let's see, where's if you do albums and then favorites, and so I would just like let's see, Goku voted. I'm gonna pick that one, and that's from I mailed in my vote this year. All right, so boom, so that I just made a color palette that fast, right? Mm-hmm. So in some ways, that wasn't very adventurous, right? It's cool, it's convenient, and it does pull out interesting colors. But then if you look at this, I'll just throw that over here and there's a lot of redundancy. There's like not all these colors are doing a separate job. There's almost like they look really similar. So I could sort them by their grayscale value. So then all of a sudden now what's funny is I'm going to move this down here so then we can see it better. Okay, there we go. So I sorted by grayscale value. So now I see the colors that have a little more, they're arranged by contrast, right? Mm-hmm. And now I can, you know, delete the ones that I think, oh, that's redundant. That's interesting. That one's redundant. And I can prune it down. I also did like, let's see, so I made some like This is from the harvest from our garden, garden harvest. So that's kind of a fall one. This is from just a photo that had like really bad light balance, but I thought it was interesting. But like, so that kind of faded memory, nostalgia feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a good, half dozen or so, color palettes, and then not all of them I shaped down to being like a, all right, come on, let me get this one dragged over here. It's not doing it. There we go. So the paperback one, I did grab that manually from the colors I thought were interesting in this screenshot from the Paperback Paradise Instagram. Which is a little meta. It's like someone curated what someone else designed and whatever, anyway, so
yeah, good point.
well, yeah, that's so that's what I ended up using. Palettes Pro is an iOS app, and it works quite well for what it does. It's just not quite as powerful as that Mac desktop tool I used to use, and so I miss it.
Well, how do you feel about the challenge or the challenge? I keep calling it a challenge. It was a practice.
Mm-hmm.
I personally felt like it was just good to get my hands into some color palette creation again and just get into the habit of like noticing color again, which is the whole purpose of a practice, right?
Mm-hmm. That's yeah. I mean, color is it's another area of concern that it's manageable, and you can get comfortable with it instinctually, or start to look at the relationships and then maybe do further research in colors or associations culturally or what have you, right? That like it's color, it's a big thing, but it's approachable, and especially when you can just remember to get colors out of photographs. And so I really appreciate Sarah Loutfi mentioning that, and I feel it was a really worthwhile practice.
I think
just
so too.
Because I don't think I pulled off the whole it's simple and it can stay simple. I let it get complicated.
One of the things that is super charming about you, Rob, is that like whenever you encounter a friction, you're like, how can I make this automated? And that usually takes you down like a whole nother friction laden road. But you usually come out the other side with like some kind of efficiency, and like I'm married to a person who, like, to some appearances, some people will look at that and say like, that's slow, and I'm like, no. she's slowing down the gears right now, because when she comes out the other side of that, everything's going to go so much faster. Wait for it. It's like that would be the t-shirt I'd make for you, is wait for it. It's going to get faster and more awesome in a second.
I don't know. You see me. Thanks. I don't know what to say to that. It's I come to accept it. I try to use timers to keep me from getting putting too much into that kind of thing. And in the 2 minute, but the thing is, I cheated. I was like, okay, I can spend 2 minutes to play with the color palette, but now I have this on my to-do list to figure out the color palette tool and stuff across platforms.
So what are we doing for the next one? We already had this like sort of preloaded before Sarah sent us on this color palette journey. So do you remember what we were planning on doing last time?
Not entirely. It was an iterative drawing thing, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes. It was going to be wasn't it the take a sheet of paper and add a character to it for 2 minutes ago? Or do we
add a character? Yeah. There's a few permutations that I've been doodling about iterative drawing. Yeah. So filling up a sheet of paper with doodled characters.
2 minutes ago.
I like that one.
I do too. And I would love to, I'm excited about encountering it and engaging with it in a let's see what happens kind of way. I don't want to walk into it with a plan. I want to walk with a blank sheet of paper, draw a thing, and then respond to that thing, then respond to those two things, then respond to those three things. I feel like that's a kind of creation that is calling upon your intuition and your instinct, which may come as a surprise to some people who've listened to me for a long time, is that I don't often advocate instinct, but instinct is an important tool as well. Intentionality is important, skill building is important, and those go in to feed your instinct and your intuition. So there are times where it's worth going back to that and listening to it.
I appreciate that a lot. And because I'm hoping that this one will have that kind of like low pressure and not be sort of not feel like a challenge type of
not a challenge
practice.
It's a practice. Yeah. Let's all go practice, everybody. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Jerzy.
So I think we did a podcast. So, episode 3. So we have successfully gotten together and thought hard about something 331 times.
Yeah.
And more. So thanks everybody for downloading, listening, and watching. We record the show weekly on Thursdays. We stream it live all over the place. And we collect it as a podcast at leanintoart.com and patreon.com/leanintoart. We'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com, and I'm Rob Stenzinger all over the place, like Instagram.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.